Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. My name is Sarah. I was going to do this sitting in our chair right here like we do all our other wrap-ups, but I kind of just felt like standing up today. Also, I have this like very Barbie-esque tennis dress on. I think it's so normal, but I do feel like Barbie right now with the earrings too. We have a lot of books to talk about. So we are doing our May, June, and July wrap-up today. And now we have 12 books to talk about for our 3-month wrap-up. We have some rereads, we have some new releases, and we have like, not including the rereads, we have like 2 or 3 5-stars from the past 3 months, which is very exciting. I have on my Notion template my rating and also the Goodreads rating, just because I kind of like to see if I'm just a very easy reader or if this is generally the consensus of everyone that's read this book. So the first book we're going to talk about is Wild Dark Shore, which on Goodreads it has a 4.18 and I gave it a 4.75. I gave it a little bit higher than the average rating just because I remember specifically this book is in a video, and I specifically remember when I was reading it I could not stop thinking about it when it was over. It was a very bittersweet kind of ending and I could not stop thinking about this book. I tried, I think in the video even like you can even see like I tried to go on to the next book, but I literally could not throughout the book. It's a very cold book and I love the way that she writes it because you feel like you're there with the characters. Like she even said, Charlotte in her author's note says that with her books, she likes to make even the setting a character that like gives you that feeling, that emotion, and it totally did. She was so successful in this, and this is a thriller, but it was a very different type of thriller. It started out where there's this dad and his 3 kids that are on this like pretty much abandoned island off at, I think it was Antarctica, and everyone has left except them because he was like a researcher there, and then all the researchers left months earlier, and it was a dad's job to shut down like the research base and all that stuff, and then they were going to go back to the mainland. But his kids have been there for almost their whole entire life. I think it's been almost a decade, if not a decade. They have developed a very close relationship to the island and to the flora and fauna and just like the animals on the island, so you learn a lot about that type of stuff, the animals on this island. It's told from several point of views, and one of them's a little kid and he tells you all about like the flora and fauna, but it always sort of relates to what's going on in the story, which is really interesting. I love that she did that. And this ending made me cry. I know that a book has to be close to a 5-star, if not a 5-star, if it makes you cry at the end. I was not expecting her to do that. It was so much more meaningful that she did. Even if you're not into thrillers, I feel like you would enjoy this book because what's interesting about this book is I actually connected to the characters. And I feel like with a lot of thrillers, for me at least, I don't necessarily connect to the characters. I'm just reading the thriller for the mystery, for the plot. And like the characters are there to move forward the plot and move forward the mystery. Whereas I feel like these characters, I cared about them and they were fleshed out, and then it was about those characters dealing with the mystery, if that makes sense. Instead of characters that were just there for the plot, these characters I got connected to more than normal thrillers. Next, we have 2 books in the series. We have Golden Sun and Morning Star by Pierce Brown. These are sci-fi books, which I haven't read a sci-fi before. Read this Red Rising trilogy. Golden Sun, Goodreads gave it a 4.49 stars and I gave it a 4 stars. For Morning Star, Goodreads gave it a 4.53 and I gave it a 4.75. So I did like Morning Star better. I remember like Red Rising, I heard about it a few years ago and then I had never started it. It was a sci-fi book and then I read the first couple of chapters and I just didn't connect to it. But what changed my mind was I listened to the graphic audio version of Red Rising, and the graphic audio version is so good and it sinks me immediately into the story right away. So I got completely into Red Rising and it was one of my favorite books. Like I said, this one was almost a 5-star read. Like it is a whole world. I've never read Star Wars, I never even watched Star Wars, but I feel like it had those kind of stakes in it. They were battling in the galaxy. It was so well done, and the author wasn't afraid to make like gory decisions or off characters' decisions, and I feel like that takes guts for an author to do because you don't want people to not read your book because you love one of their characters. In this, it was just made it more realistic. It made me cry also. I will say, I listened to both of these on graphic audio. I don't know if they would have gotten as high a rating if I just read the books instead of listening to them on graphic audio, because the way that graphic audio does them is just so perfect. It helped me get into the story so much better. I can't tell you what these two are necessarily about because they're the next two books in the series, but I'll tell you what Red Rising, the first book in the series, is about. This guy, Darrow? Yes, Darrow. There's like a caste system that goes from colors. So like the bottom of the pyramid is red, top of the pyramid is gold. And Darrow is born on the bottom of the pyramid. He's born with the reds. Bunch of events happen, but he ends up turning into a gold and having to hide that he's secretly a red and everything like that to start a revolution, essentially. There's a lot of inequality in this world where the reds at the bottom of the pyramid are like working all day, they barely have enough food, and they are told that like they're making this world livable for people, like they're doing such a good job, all that stuff. Meanwhile, the golds at the very top have been living on Mars forever, and they have such higher technology than the Reds even know about. Darrow finds out that the golds have been lying to him all along. And it's not a spoiler because it's like it says it on the back of the book, but his wife dies and it bumps him into gear for starting this like revolution and starting this like journey to be a gold. So it was very interesting. I loved the characters in this. Pierce Brown did a great job at fleshing out the characters and making you care about the side characters just as much as you cared about the main character. I really loved reading this series. Highly recommend it. Even if you don't like science fiction, because like I said, I didn't love science fiction to start, but then I read that one and I loved it. The cheat sheet, I can never say this. The Cheat Sheet by Sarah Adams. On Goodreads it has a rating of 3.71 and I gave it a rating of a 3-star. This is part of the world of the rulebook, and I read the rulebook first and I really liked that one. I think I gave that one a bit of a higher rating. I like this one because I really like Sarah Adams' writer's voice. I feel like her characters are quirky, but they're not like cringily quirky. Like I feel like they're just quirky and fun. I like the way that she writes them. It's very humorous to me. This one specifically is about Bree and Nathan. They've been best friends for a long time. Bree's goal was to be a famous dancer. She hurt herself, so she had to give up that dream, and she owns her own dance studio, but she's like struggling financially. And then Nathan's dream was to become an NFL quarterback, and he ended up doing that and he became the NFL quarterback. Now they're still trying to navigate their being best friends while they're in two completely different worlds. There's a fake dating trope in here because there's some like scandal that happens with Bree, and the only way they can kind of fix it is with Nathan stepping in and pretending they're dating. You learn from both their point, because it's a dual point of view, and they both secretly love each other. It's a friends to lovers. They both secretly love each other, but they haven't told each other because they're afraid of ruining that friendship, which I feel like that trope can be like hit or miss for me, where I'm like, oh my god, just tell them, it's fine. I feel like Sarah Adams did it in a way where it made more sense to me. That being said, there are a lot of cringeworthy moments in here in the sense of I'm not like other girls type thing. There's specific scenes where, oh, this big burly football team, like they wouldn't let anyone else do this to them besides me, and it's just, it suffers from not like other girl syndrome a little bit for humor's sake, but I feel like it didn't hit as well as she thought it would. Regardless though, I gave it a solid 3 stars. I think if you like Sarah Adams writing, you would enjoy this, but it is just a very basic contemporary romance. And I started a new series, a new dark romance series, and that is the Legacy of Gods series. So I read God of Malice by Rena Kent. I did a book haul where I basically saw that these had sprayed edges, and then all the other books in with like these new covers had sprayed edges of different colors, and I was so obsessed with them that I bought the whole entire series. So I'm definitely gonna continue this series. God of Malice on Goodreads gets a 3.93, which is higher than I thought it would get. And I gave it a 4. So basically I gave it the same amount like Goodreads has given it. It was my first journey into Rena Kent's writing, and it is about Killian and Glyndon. Even in the beginning it says, author's note is, hello reader friend, if you haven't read my books before you might not know this, but I write darker stories that can be upsetting and disturbing. My books and main characters aren't for the faint of heart. Killian Carson, the main character of this book, is a true psychopath, not a make-believe villain nor a bad boy who's eventually tamed. He's a villain with very questionable actions, so if you can't handle morally black characters, please do not proceed. So that kind of scared me at first because I read dark romance. I do get why she had that note, because in the first chapter, these kids are in college. They should be in jail. Like, but why did I keep reading it? It, I feel like, has a little bit of the Stockholm Syndrome vibe to it, but it's not like as far as like your captor, it's more like the guy who's stalking you. Killian and Glyndon, I feel like they could have definitely been a little bit more fleshed out. I feel like we got like a big chunk of the book was like rising action, right? Of her like trying to fight him off and him being like, I'm obsessed with you, and her being like, well, stop, and all this stuff. And then this little bit is like the confrontation. There's like an instance where Killian has to save Glendon, essentially. And it's solved in like one chapter, and I feel like it would have been so much more interesting if she dragged that out a little bit more and we saw a little bit more of like Killian didn't save her like right away. Like we had to sort of have him, my cats, we had to sort of have him like yearning a little bit more, I don't know. But I feel like that would have made this a higher rating. Regardless, I think it was a good dark romance book as far as dark romance books go. It was very easy to read, very simple story to follow. There are a lot of questionable things in here though, so like just beware of that if you pick this book up. It's interesting though, I am definitely going to continue the series. I think the next one's called God of Pain, and that is about her roommate, I believe. It's like basically a mafia dark romance because the bad kids like Killian and the rest of his like mafia family go to the King's U's college, and then Glendon and the rest of like the good girls go to the Royal Elite University, and they're two like competing universities, and it's interesting. I think it was kind of a fun read. Then we read This Summer Will Be Different by Carly Fortune. This is the third book of hers, and I had a very like mixed feelings about Carly Fortune before reading this book, so I was going into it kind of cautious, but I was very happily surprised. I gave it a 4.25 and Goodreads gave it a 3.96. I think it's like her best book that she's written. I haven't read One Golden Summer yet. It's on my TBR for this month, so I definitely will read that one. I read Meet Me at the Lake. I read Every Summer After. And there were just like things in both of those that I didn't completely click with, that I didn't love as much. I think I gave Meet Me at the Lake like a 2, maybe even less than a 2. This one, I could tell that she's gotten so much better in her storytelling and in her writing style, which I really appreciate and I really saw in this. I really enjoyed the story. Like I had such a good time reading it. It is about Lucy and Felix, total like a past and present timelines. In the present, Lucy's best friend Bridget is about to get married, like that week when the story opens. Then out of nowhere, Bridget decides to go to PEI, the island, and just like stay there without telling anyone. And then Lucy calls her and is like, hello, your wedding's in a week, like why are you on an island without like returning anytime soon? And then Bridget is like, I just need you to come here, please just come here, I need you. And she won't tell Lucy why she has gone to PEI instead of like being there to like prep for her wedding that's that week. So Lucy goes. The whole book is basically we don't know why Bridget left until like the last couple of chapters, and it was too much build up for it to be what it was. Like I feel like you could have had something much more groundbreaking than what the actual secret was. Maybe that's just me, but I felt like it should have been more groundbreaking for how much they built it up in the beginning, like in like literally the first 3/4 of the book. So that's the main plot line. In that plot line is the romance, and that is with Felix and Lucy, and Felix is Bridget, Lucy's best friend's brother. Again, like I said, it's told in past and present storylines. So with the past chapters, you go through the summers of 5 years, like for summer 5 years ago, summer 4 years ago, summer 3, summer 2, summer 1 year ago. It tells the story of how Bridget and Felix met in that first year 5 years ago, and Lucy did not know that Felix was Bridget's brother, so they had a one-night stand. And then when she found out that was her brother, they didn't tell Bridget about anything of them hooking up or anything like that, because one of Bridget's rules was like, you can't fall in love with my brother, essentially. And so they kept it hidden for 5 years, and you get to see the storylines of the summers past when they had to keep it hidden, and it's like little escapades and escapades. I don't know if I'm saying that word right. You see them like trying to hide their like relationship or trying to debate whether or not they should date. I will say the conclusion of the story, but apart from the fact that I feel like Bridget's secret should have been much more groundbreaking, oh, there's a cat! I knew there was a stray cat in my apartment complex, but I haven't seen it in a while, so I'm happy that it's still here. I do like how she sort of came to the resolution. It was good, it didn't feel rushed, and I liked it. So that's The Summer Will Be Different. Next, we have our rereads. We reread Fourth Wing and Iron Flame. These are my favorite series ever. 2 5-star reads. Obsessed with them, and decided to reread them in preparation for Onyx Storm, which I am reading Onyx Storm currently. That is a video that will be up next week. It's a whole reading vlog dedicated to Onyx Storm, because I did one dedicated to Fourth Wing and I did one dedicated to Iron Flame. So now Onyx Storms is coming, and I am loving it so far. But I did reread these two. I wanted to make sure that I understood everything going into Onyx Storm, like I didn't forget any little details. And I listened to it in the graphic audio version, which again was really cool, because I just read them, I didn't do the graphic audio version the first time. Listening to the graphic audio version was pretty cool, and I liked that, so I listened to graphic audio for Fourth Wing and Iron Flame. These are my 5-star reads. They remained 5-star reads. Also, I found online that like if you put all the books together, then there's like an ombre effect. I have to get Onyx Storm down here, but that'd be kind of cool if there is. You guys know how I feel about them. I'll leave the videos here and in the description because I go deep into my first time reading them and like spoiler sections and non-spoiler sections. So if you want to get my full thoughts on these books, you could watch those videos. It's my favorite series. I love it so much. They still are 5 stars to me. I just love Xaden, I love Violet, and I love their world. And I love the dragons. On Goodreads, Fourth Wing has 4.58 stars, and Iron Flame has 4.36 stars. First Ellen Hildebrand book, we read The Hotel Nantucket. On Goodreads, it has a 4.05 rating, and I gave it a 3. Mainly because it took me a while to get through it. I don't know what I was expecting picking this book. I never read an Ellen Hildebrand book before, but I heard they were good beach reads. You're really just following a few characters throughout their lives working at this hotel. Like, that's kind of the whole plot, is you're just following these characters. It's very character driven. There's a ghost perspective that you get, hotel manager's perspective, there's front desk clerk, and everyone has a secret. The reader knows them relatively early on, except for some, what the secret is. You're just seeing them sort of navigate their secrets, not wanting to get out, along with running this super successful hotel. And the big thing that they're building up to is this very famous hotel reviewer. I forget what her name is. Kelly Carpenter or something. She goes to different hotels, she's undercover, and everyone looks at her blog for like what hotels she rates, and no hotel has ever gotten a 5 key rating. Their goal is to get a 5 key rating. In this hotel, it was completely revamped, and it honestly, from reading the description, sounds so pretty. But basically in the start of the book, this like very famous billionaire revamps the Hotel Nantucket, which has burned down in a fire a few years ago and had like sort of bad luck throughout their time being a hotel. His goal is to redo it, and he wants to impress, he says, 2 women. One of them being the famous hotel blogger. I don't remember her name is. I feel like it's Shelley Carpenter, but I don't know if that's right. And then someone else you don't know until the very end, and it's kind of cool how they tied that in. There's something that our main character writes called the Blue Book, which is basically a bunch of things you can do in Nantucket, and I saw it. It's actually a published book in Barnes & Noble, which is kind of a cool relation. I think I'm going to read more Ellen Hildebrand books. I like the way she writes her characters. Sith and Sparrow by Bryn Weaver. Goodreads gave it a 4.09 and I gave it a 4.25. This is the third and last book in the Butcher and Blackbird, or the Ruinous Love trilogy, but it's the first book, Butcher and Blackbird. The second book is Leather and Lark, and this is the third book, and this is about Rose and Fionn. You meet Rose and Fionn in the first book, so you kind of know they're getting a book. You just sort of meet them, you don't know what their whole story is. This is their story, and it's very interesting because basically the Ruinous Love trilogy is a story about serial killers. It's like love stories about serial killers, and it's just so fun. I love the way Bryn Weaver writes them. They're so funny. I should not be rooting for these serial killers to fall in love, but I am. Love the way she writes her characters. Rose is a traveling circus performer. She rides a motorcycle for one of her things, and she also like reads tarot cards. That's her like thing. And then Fionn is a doctor, the third brother of the other 2 brothers from the first and second books. He gets sort of wrapped up in this like serial killer thing with Rose. They have to sort of navigate it with him being a doctor and everything like that. I think the villain in this was very scary. I think they did a good job at making the villain scary in this. I think throughout all 3 of the books, they did a pretty good job at making the villain scary. When a kill goes awry and she ends up with a broken leg, Rose finds herself stuck in Nebraska at the home of the adorably nerdy town doctor. Forced proximity, fun thing like that. I liked it. I like Bryn Weaver's writing, and also the book. The audiobook is a duet narration, I think that's what it's called. The female voice actor and the male voice actor says their part throughout the whole book, so it's not just like their chapters they read their lines throughout the other POV chapters, if that makes sense. I like this audiobook, and I really like this book. Highly recommend it. I think my favorite one still has to be the first one. That one it was just so good, but this is a good third book. I like how they ended it. I saved the last 2, the best 2, for last, besides Fourth Wing and Iron Flame, of course, because these are both 5 stars, and I am so happy I found them. Just for the Summer by Abby Jimenez. Do you see all these tabs that I have on this book? It is so good. It's so cute. I want to hold off on reading this because someone had told me that it's a part of like this world of Say You'll Remember Me. Her new one is like the next in this series, but the first one is Part of Your World. The second one's Yours Truly. I read Yours Truly, read Just for the Summer, but I never read Part of Your World. Someone told me that I should wait to read this one until I read Part of Your World, and that's why I kept on putting it off. But I was like, you know what, whatever. I just heard so many good things about this book, let me just read it. And it was so good! So it starts out with Emma and Justin. They think they're both cursed in love, so whoever they date ends up finding their soulmate when they break up with them, basically. So they're like love's good luck charm for everyone but themselves, because they can never find their soulmate, because they're always the one that jumpstarts whoever they date to find their soulmate next. It ends up on the Reddit thread of AITA, which I didn't hear about until reading this book, but now I see it all the time. It's a real Reddit thread. They basically find out that they both have the same curse. They decide to make this pact where it's like, let's just date each other, because then maybe our curses will cancel out and we'll meet our soulmate when we break up. So that's the arrangement they make. Of course, feelings develop, things get changed from the plan, and it is so sweet. Justin is such a sweet guy in this book. Emma has a lot of baggage in the sense of her mom has been very absentee when she was little. She had to take care of herself a lot, and now her mom's come back in their life. She's just expecting basically for the other shoe to drop, her mom to explode her life up again. Dealing with that while Justin is also dealing with his mom going to jail, and he has to take care of his 3 younger siblings suddenly. They both have separate things they're dealing with that are very serious while they're in this romance, and I like that Abby Jimenez does this, because she does this in all of her books, where there's always sort of like a deeper aspect of what they're going through and then just a regular contemporary romance book, and I do appreciate that a lot. Emily Henry does the same thing. Love the way she wrote this book. I loved Emma and Justin. Some of these quotes, oh my gosh. If you like acts of service, this is for you. This is totally acts of service coded. Little things that Justin does for Emma is so sweet, and also it explores more than just romantic soulmates. It explores platonic soulmates too. Emma's best friend Maddie, one of her platonic soulmates, and she has a whole thing about that. Highly recommend you read this one. It was so cute, so good. The last book, also a 5 stars. You probably know what I'm gonna say, because I have been non-stop thinking about this book and this movie since I read it. The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes by Suzanne Collins. Can I tell you that my TikTok like saved history is all edits. All edits of the Ballad and Songbird Snakes movie, specifically to Gracie Abrams' I Told You Things song. Those edits are so good. I had never seen the movie. It came out a few years ago, and we just never, my boyfriend and I just never made it a point to see it. We saw it for the first time a few months ago, and it exceeded all expectations. Like, I was just like, oh, it's just like the, you know, a Hunger Games prequel, like whatever. I was in the Hunger Games era. Like, I read the Hunger Games and everyone else was reading it in like middle school or high school, whenever it was. But I was never like super obsessed with the Hunger Games world. So I sort of like put off the prequel, and now they have Sunrise on the Reaping, which I'm very excited to read after reading this one. So I just like kind of put it off. I never really put it as like a priority for me to read or watch. But then we were just looking to watch something, so we decided to watch this. And it was so good. And this book, I'm telling you, if you read this book, you have to watch the movie. And if you watch the movie, you have to read the book, because you get so much more context for Coriolanus Snow's mindset in this book. Like, it doesn't really come across in the movie, because you can't see his inner narration, but he is such a narcissist in this book, and I feel like if you read his inner monologue, you can understand why he does the things he does a lot more, like in the movie, and just like knowing what he was thinking when he was doing the things that he did in the movie adds so much more context to it, and context to his character and why he eventually becomes the villain. So good. I think that Suzanne Collins did such a successful prequel. It is pretty long. It's over 500 pages. People were complaining about the, you know, length and all that stuff, but I think it's good because it has 3 separate parts. There's one part that's called The Mentor, when Coriolanus becomes Lucy Gray's mentor. There's one called The Prize, which is like the games, and the last one is called The Peacekeeper, which is when Snow gets sent to be a peacekeeper. It is so good. I love it. I've been listening to the soundtrack nonstop. I am obsessed with it. So that is Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, and that is the last book in our May, June, July wrap up. Those are all 12 books you read. Oh, did I even say Goodreads gave it a 3.99, and I gave it a 5-star, obviously. Ballad of Songbirds. So yeah, those are all 12 of the books that we read this past 3 months. Like I said, I'm so happy that I reread two of my favorite books from my farait series, 2 new 5-star reads. Just so happy with this past 3 reading months. That is it from me today. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye!